It's been just so exciting to finally hear real voices in real time singing this music. You know, for all of us, especially because it's a new piece, there are no recordings of it other than some digital files to kind of give people a rough sketch of what it's going to sound like. But it's nothing like hearing not only real singers, but individual personalities and what they bring to their parts. So it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes together. I think that opera conducting is the kind of thing that chooses you, you know. My path began very early on here in Orlando. I'm a native of Longwood, and you know, experienced a lot of performances at the former Orlando Opera and the Orlando Rep and all of those local institutions growing up. And actually, it was when I was in first grade, we were attending a show at the Orlando Rep, and my first grade teacher knew that I was studying piano, and before the show began, the music director and some other musicians and stuff were walking around the auditorium, and she said, "Oh, you know, we got this kid here who's studying music," and he let me hold the baton, and I was hooked from there. So it's kind of coming full circle now, going back to the museum. But I was fortunate to have a really rich musical upbringing, obviously beginning with the piano around age 4, and from there I picked up French horn in middle school, and it was my middle school band director who had the idea that I should get into conducting opera, because he knew that I was a pianist. I had the experience now of playing an orchestral instrument, which I later went to play in like Florida Symphony Youth Orchestra and some other groups around here. But he knew that this combination of skills would translate well to conducting for opera. So I kind of went from there. Worked a lot as an organist. That was my very first professional experiences were as an organist in college. And that also was very good as a conductor, because organ is very much, it's the most similar instrument to conducting, in which you cannot produce the sound yourself. You must manipulate something else, compel it to produce the sounds that you want. So it requires a really good internal concept of the music. As well as the fact that on a practical level, organists have to learn a great deal of music in a short amount of time. And with an opera, for example, even Death of Ivan Illych, which is for an opera still fairly short, roughly 90 minutes or less, still 300 pages of full orchestral score. So for a working conductor, you have a lot of music you're responsible for at one time. So from there, you know, I began playing for opera rehearsals and such, and then went on to study conducting with some teachers in Europe. I was very fortunate in that regard, and that sort of brought me to today. For this production, it is a chamber opera. It was scored originally for 7 instruments: string quintet, piano, and oboe. This is not a reduction or an arrangement of a larger force. It was written specifically for these forces. Right, when I was first exposed to it, the first thing that struck me, I knew it was a chamber opera. And oftentimes with chamber operas, you have very spare, or there's a sort of pithiness, shall we say, to the writing. What struck me with this is how just red-blooded, expansive, all of these just very large scale, large scope there is to the music. It's very sweeping. I was immediately taken by the harmonic qualities of the music, the vocal writing, the lines. All of these components were really, how would one say, something that you wouldn't expect for a smaller scale opera. They really feel like full scale romantic opera.
To suffer.
The more I've studied this score, what's really struck me is that this shares a really important component in common with, I think, all of the great operas of the past, which is there's a way that these composers have of integrating the material. What does this mean? So for example, even in the very early operas, sometimes characters will be identified by keys or by certain instrumental groupings, or certain textures that will that help give the listener a sense of where he or she is in the drama. They help delineate where things are. And then later, Wagner would be the great example, specific musical motifs being identified with characters, and then these recur throughout the opera. John, in this opera, which apparently its genesis began as a set of pieces for oboe and piano, from which he developed this entire score. There's something organic about how the motifs work together. I keep finding new connections between some of the melodic ideas and how he'll reuse those in, let's say, an accompaniment figure or rhythmic gestures that come back. So it's not just random, response to the dramatic situation. Kind of like, let's say, movie music. Oftentimes will respond. This actually sets up the dramatic sequence or the dramatic situations, and that's something that really separates the great operas and the successful operas from ones that might have even very beautiful music but don't drive the story.
Unceasing agony.
For me, my favorite day is the final room run. To those who might not know about our process, first, when we come in, we have a sing-through with just piano, and the sing-through is really just sticking to the music that is actually sung. We don't do, overtures or instrumental things. It's just a chance to hear the singers. Then from there, we do staging, which we take small chunks of the work and rehearse those, with the priority being getting the dramatic situations worked out on stage. Finally, once all of this has been worked through, we do what's called the final room run, which is basically a dry run of the piece, still with piano, but this is the first time we really get a sense of how is this going to hang together in this specific instance. And it's often a very emotional sort of day, and it's kind of like a rallying point for the cast when they finally get the sense, wow, we've put this show together. So that's my favorite day. Well, my career has taken me to a lot of very interesting and unexpected sorts of venues, but the one that still sticks out to me is the Wanamaker organ in Philadelphia, which is, for those who don't know, this is the largest musical instrument in the world, and it is housed in a department store. It's currently a Macy's, but originally it was the Wanamaker store. And John Wanamaker was sort of an interesting figure in that he was so ahead of his time. We see Opera Orlando and other performing organizations today trying to reach out to community through doing the Opera on the Town series and initiatives like this, getting music really to the people in situations and venues that are more accessible, that have less of a barrier to entry. And Wanamaker had this idea that by putting an instrument, in this case a great pipe organ, in a department store, he would somehow bring a sense of edification or elevation to day-to-day activities. So performing there is really a special experience and sticks with me to this day.
Under the unsolvable.
The audience will really have, because of the setup, they're going to be quite immersed in the sound. The orchestra, we don't have a proscenium stage here and pit. The players are really going to be very close to the audience. So that will kind of provide a bit of a surround sound sort of experience for the audience. I think they will be struck, though, by the fact that even though there are only 7 players, just how much inventiveness there is in the range of colors that John has been able to produce, even with such limited forces. They should be ready to hear sounds that evoke everything from church organs to even brass and wind instruments. He has a way of writing, especially for the strings, and combining that with either the piano or the solo oboe, that evoke a really wide tapestry of orchestral colors. So the audience, I think, will be very surprised that such small forces are producing such a wide range of sound. What's really important for the audience to remember, I think there's a lot of apprehensiveness about new opera. Many people are turned off by the notion of hearing either discordant music or music that's just going to go completely over their heads. And in this piece, John has really found a way of evoking the best of the old traditions, the melodic writing for voices, tonality in his harmonic language, but adapting it for our time. It sounds fresh. It sounds like a piece that was written in the 21st century, but it does not have any of the thorniness or the inaccessibility of some of the other modern operas. So I hope the audience will come to it with open ears and be ready to be swept away by what is really just a remarkable work.
The questions are the same.